Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink, I had in cartridges, and I've had in cartridges, and yeah, how do I put this? So it's by Pilot. It's from their Mixable Series. It is green. This is what I put into the vial after I finished the tests. And so I've had these inks for a while. They're part of a series. When they're new, they come in a little box like this. And you get the 12 different colors. You get one of each. And my family in the past has given me boxes of these as presents. And at one point I had enough to fill this little box. This would be what I would take with me when I would travel. So I could use my Pilot pens, because literally there have been times when I've walked into a pen shop in Europe and, you know, I've had one of the empty cartridges and I'm like, do you have one of these? And they're fascinated by the little metal ball inside and they have no idea what I'm talking about. That's starting to change. The Parallel, which is one of the pens that I used in these tests, can now be found in Italy, at least. I've seen it there. But yeah, so I've had these for years, and the thing is, they're not the most well-behaved inks, and because they've been on airplanes a few times, and, you know, a couple of them are a couple years old, and whatever. Some of my tests in the past have not had very good results, so I thought I would retest them with fresh cartridges, and this was the first one that I did, and it is green, so that one, not light green, but just green. Yeah, let's get into the tests. Yeah, it's fairly dark in the vial, but yeah, so these are the two pens that I used, and as I said, this is a Parallel. This is the 1.5, and I don't always have the best luck with this pen, because you have to hold it, because of the shape of the nib, you have to hold it a very specific way. You can't rotate it at all. So yeah, I always have to be very careful when I'm using that one so I can use it properly. And this is another Pilot, of course, because these are proprietary cartridges. They really only work in Pilot pens. This is a Metropolitan, and it's got a fine nib, and it's a Japanese fine, which means it is extremely fine. When I'm writing with this pen, I feel like I'm trying to write with a razor blade. Now, as you might be able to tell, it's a very vibrant color. It's a bright color. It's intense. I don't know if this will show up, but right through here, come on camera, it's almost sheeny. So yeah, there's that. I wanted to find some comparables. Let's see what I got. Yeah, okay, so here's Noodler's Green Cactus Eel. And as you can tell, it's fairly light, but the thing is, the darker bits through here are actually quite like the lighter bits through here. Here we go. Here's Quaco Palm Green, which is their green color. Quite similar, and even in the parts where it gets dark, looks very like there. Here's KWZ, a Polish brand. It's their green number 2. It's not an iron gall. Similar in some places. This one does get a bit lighter in spots, but yeah. And lastly, Private Reserve Spearmint Green, which is lighter, but I feel like the medium through here is actually quite similar to bits through here. Sorry, I suddenly got the hiccups, so hopefully that'll go away. Fingers crossed. Okay, so here's the chromatography. Yeah, so here we go. This is the one as it's supposed to be done. You cannot tell where that initial drop was put at all. So really doesn't imply a lot of water fastness. And then it's just empty, empty, empty. And then you get this very bright green at the bottom, and then it gets a little darker towards the top. And I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but it is actually blue right along that edge. And the one where I let it dry, which granted is not how you're supposed to do it, but I've been doing it, and I feel like it's, in small ways, taught me a lot about inks. Yeah, there's essentially no difference. There really isn't, with the exception that maybe this blue at the top stands out just a tiny bit more. Yeah, so there's that. Now, I wanted to see what this ink could stand up to. Ooh, camera, calm down. Calm down, camera. Anyway, so here's the water test. As you can see, water really got it moving. But you might be able to see some of this woolliness underneath, which if you look at the pattern of this smear here, that would have been a very dark area. Bleach turned it blue before completely removing it. Ammonia pen flush really got it moving. And hydrogen peroxide also kind of left this woolly texture underneath. But yeah, so there you go. Now, paper test. Top down in density, Clairefontaine, 90 grams per square meter. Yeah, it's still really woolly. Yeah, that Japanese fine took 7 seconds to dry. The 1.5 parallel took 14. We do get some shading, and the color is bright and intense, and in fact my camera's darkening it up a bit, so I don't know if that helps, but no it doesn't. Going back. Anyways, I shall fix it in post. You might be able to tell there is a woolliness to it. And if I bring this in, I don't know, maybe you can't see that, but I know you can see that. And again, that's the Japanese fine that you're looking at, that right there, that's the Japanese fine. And we've got some feathering. And the thing is, it's not just along this edge, it's throughout. It's got a very woolly texture. There isn't a wide breadth of shading, and I think it's because that texture does tend to get kind of woolly. You can see the texture of the paper. There's no bleed. There's no spread. There's really not any echo. And there's no sheen on here, but we do get some feathering. And this water test, kind of like the chromatography implied, it is really, really gone. It did dye the page a bit. There are little hints of things left behind. And what I found amusing is a lot of times the broader, wetter pens, those are the dots that remain that are easier to see after a water test. Here, amusingly enough, the ones that are most obvious are that Japanese fine. So I thought that was kind of funny. Next up is Fabriano Eco Qua. It's an 85 gram per square meter paper. It tends to be able to handle inks that other papers can't. I don't know what it is, because I mean, Clairefontaine is more dense, and Rhodia has a ceramic component added to it in the pressing process, and yet Fabriano often is able to handle more aggressive inks, and this is one of those cases. I mean, if we look here, that is a wide breadth of shading right there in the scrubby. And we get shading within the writing, which we didn't really see on Clairefontaine. And I want you to look at, so you see these dark bits through here in the scrubby? It doesn't want to show up on camera, but it actually shines a little bit. It's a little bit like a hazy sheen. It's a dark red color. But yeah, that Japanese fine took 10 seconds to dry. The 1.5 parallel took 16. But this is, on here it's very, it's bright without being light. It's intense. You can tell because in the smear that's some very solid color. It looks good. There's no bleed, no feather, no feathering on here, finally. Thank goodness, because this is a Japanese fine. No bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo. I say no sheen, but it really wants to. It's like a hazy kind of sheen here in the wettest parts. You do get a little bit of a, yeah, you get some beautiful shading in the writing. I really hope that shows up. But here in the water test, now this is interesting. So it didn't come out the back, but that first line of that W in the water and that Japanese fine, that did remain, and I'm not entirely sure why. But pretty much everything else is really gone. And just the barest hints of what's left behind from that 1.5, it's like a lemony yellow, or like a an still developing lemon, you know, when they're still green. Yeah. So yeah, there's that. Not a lot of water resistance. And next up is Rhodia. 80 grams per square meter. And we're back to the woolliness. It's got this sort of like woolly texture where you can start to see the, you know, the texture of the pulp that's pressed into the paper. That Japanese fine took 10 seconds to dry. The 1.5 took 15, which honestly, I mean, when you think about how large of a nib that is, most nibs that you'll find on pens are 1.1 or so. This one's broader, and it's putting down a good bit of ink. And so the fact that it's drawing on these very dense papers in, what is it, 14, 16, 15 seconds. Really not bad, but I hope this comes through. We do get some shading, but it's got a texture to it. You can sort of see, yeah, that it's fighting the paper, or the paper's fighting the ink or something. It's problematic. There's some feathering, but there's no bleed, no spread, no echo, no sheen on here, not even approaching it, which is disappointing, but... And again, the water test is really obliterated. The stuff here at the edge remains a little bit, but that's about it. Again, those Japanese fine dots remain more than the 1.5, which is not like the usual, but still amusing. Now, next up is Tomoe River paper, which is known for bringing out shading and sheen and dry times and echo. It is extremely thin paper. Now, if you're old enough to know what a fax machine is, and you remember those, and if you're even old enough to remember fax machines where you had to load rolls of paper, and it's sort of just, you know, fed out almost like tape from a tape dispenser, this feels just like that. That's what this feels like. And it's notorious for just not, you know, even inks that would feather under the best of circumstances, this paper is known for just saying, like, nope, not doing it. And that's kind of what this paper did today with this ink. There is no feathering, which is great. But unlike the Fabriano, where it didn't feather, this is still an 85-gram paper. It's still pretty, it's got some oomph to it. It's thicker. Whereas this, it's so thin that we do get some echo just because it's so thin, and this ink can get fairly dark where there's shading. So, it's especially prevalent in that 1.5. So, I don't know, it's kind of a trade-off, but it does look beautiful on here. I mean, let's just look at this shading. It's beautiful, right? Look at that cue and quickly. Very nice. Now, that Japanese fine took 14 seconds. That 1.5 jumped from 14 on Clairefontaine, 16 on Fabriano, 15 on Rhodia to 24. That's an intense jump. And that's something this paper does. It draws out dry times. But, and please let this show up on camera. See around the wettest parts in that bottom scrubby? Oh, it doesn't want to show, but it's sheen. It's sheening. It's like a dark red color. It's very nice. But yeah, we even get shading, a little bit of shading in that Japanese fine. It's just the problem is the lines are so small, it's hard to show on camera. But yeah, anyways, no bleed, no feather, no spread. There is echo. There's a little bit of sheen. Now this paper loves to let ink just slide away when you add more water, and that is most certainly what happened here. It didn't even dye the page all that much. Where that Japanese fine was, which is right above where my pinky is right now, you can't even tell that there was anything there except for like the way the paper warped. The 1.5, actually the camera is picking this up a little better than my naked eye can. There's just the barest hint of something left. So yeah, not a lot of water resistance. Now for the next 3 tests, I just used that Japanese fine except to write the name. And this is the world's worst 20-pound copier paper. This stuff is literally the worst paper I have ever encountered. Yeah, let's try and compare line width. So here it is on Tomoe River where there's no spread. Now, this is the 20-pound, and you can see the line got broader. This is definitely a Western fine, what this ends up turning into. And we get a wooliness. We don't really have any shading. I say it dries almost instantly, but really it was absorbed. It sunk into the paper. And we get feathering. And we get bleed. I mean, this is a Japanese fine. And granted, I'd say the ink is a little wet. I'd say it's 5.5 or no, I'd say it's a 6 at least. It is a bit wet. But what's happening here is instead of just like the hints, like the ghost, the echo that we see out the back, we have many dots, many tiny dots of full-on bleed, which is quite disturbing for a Japanese fine, even if this is the world's worst paper. Now, as to the water test, more absorbent papers tend to draw the ink in and not want to let it out so easily when you add water. The thing is, this is This is a mess. Yeah, it doubled down on spread, it tripled down on feathering, it got hazy. Like when I look at it, I feel like I'm wearing someone's Coke bottle glasses, you know, like my eyes are forced out of focus. It is extremely hard to read. But we do get a little bit of that color separation. Like you can see the top of the T is a bit more blue. Thought that was a bit interesting. But yeah, that would not be fun to try and recover. Now next up is Mead Notebook Paper, which is very common in the United States. This is the type that you'd find in like a spiral notebook, not necessarily the kind you'd find in like a lab notebook. Lately, this stuff has been feathering like crazy, and here it does again. As you can probably tell, we don't really have any shading. It took half a second to dry, which is pretty quick, but again, this is Japanese fine. I hope this comes through. Yeah, we get feathering. We get some spread, but as you can see, this is the 20 pound. It's not as much as the 20 pound. So yeah, I'll call this a moderate Western fine or a generous Japanese fine. Yeah, the feathering is really not good. Now the thing is, this is thinner than 20 pound paper, but because my usual 20 pound paper is so awful, usually Mead outperforms it. And here, I don't know if I can say that it did, because we didn't get full bleed, but we did get a few spots where it very nearly came out the back. That was probably me. Like I said, trying to write with a Japanese fine for me is like trying to write with a razor blade. I do occasionally start to scratch through the paper, which is kind of what happened there. But yeah, this paper does tend to freak out when you add water, and it certainly did here. I mean, this is a disaster. Yes, more remained. You know, it is one of the absorbent papers, but that would be very painful to try and recover. There's a lot of spread. There's a lot of feathering. It dyed the page. That would not be fun. I'm assuming, I don't know, maybe you find that entertaining. That could be something you do for yourself, for entertainment, trying to read things you wrote. I don't know. I should stop assuming. Now, lastly is Moleskine paper, which I hate because it is very poorly made, and yet they make you pay a lot of money for it. So yeah, it's terrible. But here we can kind of see why. Lots of feathering. Lots of feathering. It's ugly feathering too. It's big, it's distracting, it's very noticeable. Took 3 seconds to dry. You can actually see the texture of the pulp they mashed into the paper. It's not good. Just bad. And then look at this. This got all over the page below. Meaning that as I was writing this, spots from all over these little dark areas ended up on the page below. And as I said, this is a Japanese fine. This pen is so fine, it's like writing with a razor blade. And granted, this ink is a little wet, but this is too much. This, when you get, no, that's not okay. And then let's look at this water test. I wrote that, and I can barely read it. This is worse than feeling like you're wearing Coke bottle glasses. This is, stuff's overlapping. It's terrible. But yeah, anyway, so there you go. There's Pilot Mixable Green. Yeah, the thing is, I thought maybe fresher cartridges would give me more amiable results. I don't think it did. These are very, very... The ink acts very aggressively, which is actually something I've seen from a lot of the Japanese manufactured inks. I'm thinking of Roshizuku. Pretty much all of the tests I've done on the Roshizukus I've tried, the ink's been very aggressive. It causes feathering and things in denser papers, things like that. I thought that the test I'd done before was because of poor aging. Apparently not. Look great on Fabriano. Look good on Tomoe River. It was just a little too much for the cheap papers to handle. And even on the premium papers, we got feathering. And we got it in both pens. Even the Japanese fine. So, yeah. Yeah, so there you go for your consideration from the Triple N Network. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.